Hi everyone, welcome to CANNESERIES Live, the digital platform of the festival. It's online from October 9th to October 14th and of course live in Cannes. Hello Baran, hello Jantje, how are you?
Hello.
All good, all good.
Very good, yes.
It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've been watching all the series, your previous movies, and before we had other masterclasses, and I did chronological interviews, starting from early films or short movies to the more recent things. I think with you, it's more interesting to go backwards and move in time. So let's start with the end. And would you tell us? If you always had in mind the end of Dark and the fact that there would be 3 seasons and not 4, not 5, nor 6, not one, just 3.
Yeah, so the first time we actually pitched the idea to Netflix, we didn't really know what we were doing because we came from features. We didn't have any idea how to create a TV series, but for some reason we felt really strongly that it should be 3 seasons and nothing else. The first time we told them that we want to do 3 seasons, we didn't quite know why we wanted it that way. I think probably because coming from feature films, we kind of thought in 3 acts. And it made sense to us to have a narration that is also in 3 acts and to have really get to know the world in the first season, then dive deeper into it in the second one, and then wrap it all up in the third season. And then also the idea of having the number 3 play a big role was there in the beginning. So we thought all of this tied up really nicely. And we had this one idea where we wanted to go to in the end. But on the way, we have to be honest, a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces did change. It's not like we went in there and said, we laid out the whole narration for you and this is how every scene will look like. It was more like a vague idea, which we tried to then shape out during the 3 seasons.
And did you know from the start that it would be a love story of a young couple throughout ages and time and different time in different worlds? Or did you start it as a science fiction time traveler's story?
No, I think that the whole emotional part was really important to us because I think probably because someone once told me after Who Am I that they felt it was too conceptual and it was lacking emotion. I was really pissed by that comment and took it by heart. And so it was really important for us also as a learning process to really understand if you do genre and you do very heady stuff, that you have to ground it in emotion. And the idea was always to do more of a Greek mythology kind of thing, that everyone is like, it's really Greek tragedy more, like everyone is connected with everyone and there's so much drama and trauma, and in its core is really this love couple and emotional relationship that grounds it all.
And when we sold the pitch idea to Netflix, and of course they loved the high concept idea of time travel, and no one did time travel so far as a show. We always said, but at the end, forget about the high concept because it will be a family drama. It will be about 4 families and their characters, and then the alter versions of the younger version and the older version, whatever. So that was, I think, from the first day on, very important to us that, yes, it is a time travel show, but actually it's all about the characters. And we just use the effect of time travel to push them into situations that you usually are not, hopefully not facing in real life. And that's what I think they loved at the end the most of it, you know.
And I think our generation, you were born in the late 70s, I was born in 1981, was marked by the Chernobyl catastrophe in 1986. Was that a fuel for the series? Was that an influence for you?
No, definitely. We both remember those couple of weeks of terror a lot, even if nothing really actually happened in our countries, especially. But I do remember that my mom told me, you can't get out, you can't play outside. There's a nuclear waste drain coming and it will kill us all. and it created this weird paranoia. And I was that was 86, so I was 8 years old, so I was really like freaking out, and I felt like we're all going to die, we're all going to die. And then I was fearing something that was never there, but it was very abstract, but I could still feel that. So that was definitely a big influence for Dark. But also my father worked at a nuclear power plant, sort of as a manager, so I was always close to that subject, sort of in a positive and negative way, of course, because some people think, I would say France, for example, there's a lot of nuclear power plants there, but there was also the movement against it, of course, because they were fearing that energy. I was constantly confronted with that theme, to be honest, since I'm a kid.
And of course, we could add to that the huge environmental crisis, the idea that we realize every day more and more that our world might not last forever. So I think that in fiction today, you see more and more of, stories about other worlds going somewhere else. But the very beautiful idea in Dark, very original, is that you can move to many, many different worlds. You're always stuck into your story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all ego driven. You're creating your own world in terms of how you think about yourself, you think about your world. The worldview you have basically shapes everything around you. So that's the idea, and that everyone has a completely different perspective, and those perspectives obviously clash.
But I also think that right now, or it started a couple of years ago, but I think right now it's the theme in storytelling is really this apocalyptic feeling that you feel like we question ourselves, like, why are we so interested in the apocalypse, and that the world will go down, and either we go with it down, or we will move somewhere else to another planet or whatever. And I think this is the generation that actually is fearing that we are destroying our worlds with the environment and nuclear waste or whatever, but also politics and nations. And it is very, very present, that feeling. But when we started Dark, it wasn't that much, I would say. And yeah, who would have known that the apocalypse in Dark is actually at the end nicer than maybe the real one we're facing right now, with everything that is happening right now,
Yes. So now we're moving to a lighter subject, the 80s. I think the 80s has a very interesting tone in the series, and I'd like to show you an extract from your own series, if you don't mind. Do you remember recreating the 80s in Germany? How did you do that?
It was so much fun, especially with the costumes. Like, it's also our costume designer had so much fun with it, because you just get all those stuff from flea markets or secondhand shops, and then all those shapes and weird, the color mixing is so odd, like what you pair. And I thought it was a lot of fun, but I'm also obsessed by the 80s. I just love the 80s so much.
Yeah, we're really obsessed with the 80s, but maybe we were raised in the 80s, especially as young kids. Like, I would say we're more of a grunge generation. When we were 16, 17, it was more the 90s. But as a kid, and I have an older sister, she's 5 years older, she was like completely in the 80s with the hair and everything. And I was more an observer of the 80s, that I felt it's kind of awkward what everyone is doing, and the makeup and Duran Duran and all these things, and this, I don't know, also running towards a dream that mostly was coming from America, where there's a version of a world where you feel like you can be everyone you want to be, and everything is about power and being cool and stuff like that. And we talked recently about this. This has all changed all of a sudden. We just realized actually it was really just a dream version of a world that actually didn't exist. It was mostly just bad haircuts and terrible costume designs. But I think great music back then. It was great music.
Yes, and when you hear the music in the extract, you can hear. I never thought I'd meet a girl like you, and Jonas has a very unexpected meeting. So you can really, I think, the music in Dark, it really tells another story, a story inside the story.
Yeah, a lot of the songs we picked are actually songs we listen to a lot. Like they're some of our favorite songs as well. And it was just cool to hear that again.
Yeah, and it's very romantic music. I think it's very interesting too, because when you go back in time in the series, it's also where love, starts, is rooted, and this feeling is very strong. So it's more than just cinegenic artifacts like Walkman, and which are really beautiful, by the way. But it's more than that. It's really going back to a feeling, and also maybe to your childhood memories as cinephiles.
Yeah, completely. And memories is a very important theme, I would say, in our storytelling, because it is such I don't know, we have a very melancholic feeling towards memories, because again, something that happened in the past, and that was always a big theme in Dark too. So it's obviously it's a time travel show, so it's about time, but it was mostly about like, what did I do in my past, and how can I redo it or do it differently, or did I do it right, and what were my dreams back then when I was a child, and how are they actually now? So we love that contrast a lot, where, for example, Katharina Nielsen's character, who is like this bully character in the 80s, and she's like the boss and really the cool girl at school, all of a sudden she is this boring school how do you call headmaster, and she has a family, and she's a mother, and she's no more that character she was in the 80s. And step by step, that character is coming back in season 2, especially, where she turns more into this bully character and even hitting people again. And she's basically forced back into that character she once was. Yeah, that's what we actually, for us, that was the most interesting part on this show, that we can play around with time in this interesting way, and characters.
I think it had a lot to do with personal psychotherapy as well. Like the sins or the things we committed when we were younger, like when we hurt people, and what that actually had, what effect that had on other people. And then also kind of reflecting on who we are now. Is that really better? Are we still stuck in that same system? And kind of looking out into the future, who will we become? And is there, how can we ever get out of our own system and how we behave? Or are we ever and for always stuck in there? So I think with all the characters and with Dark itself, it's very personal to both of us.
Yeah, completely. But you were like saying it's romantic, the music, for example, but it's like it just fits so well because Jonas, the lead character, starts so innocent and almost romantic or naive, and I think he has really one of the most interesting arcs ever that a character in a show had, because if you look at what he's then going through over the next 66 years, that's like I do remember I was standing on set with Luis, and I think he was doing something really tough and dramatic and heavy scene, and then we shot after that a very light scene from a period where he wasn't yet the stranger or was pushed into time travel. And I said, I looked like how, like this poor guy, where he went through, and it hit us so emotionally that we both almost cried on set, because that character touched us so much, that this poor innocent guy in his yellow jacket that just wanted to love that girl and go to school and to parties, has to save the world, and then he has to save the girl, and then he has to destroy the world, and just to
kill the girl.
and then kills the girl and realizes everything was for nothing. And
yeah, it's a very mellow, very emotional, and very sweet ending for a show called Dark. I mean, we were not expecting a happy ending, but it's incredibly sweet.
Bitter for us, always bittersweet. But it was really important that we heavy, high concept show. We always felt it needs to end emotionally and close to the characters. And let's forget about the time travel thing and really get back to what the show was actually about. You know, these two people loving each other so much that they were running into wrong directions and had to realize our love is not as important as the world, or
Of course. There is one object that I really enjoy in Dark, and that I wanted to know what you felt about it. It's also your the Twitter account, Jantje. For me, it's, and then you tell me what it is for you. But for me, it's really something really touching when you were raised in the 80s, because you knew when it changed from radio to Twix. But for people who were, grew up after 1991, it's like it comes from a multiverse, from another universe, because those brands never change. And this object is the proof that sometimes even those huge, colossal chocolate bar brands can change. So it kind of contradicts the theme of the series almost.
Yeah, but what we liked about it, that it's, and there is a sentence that Elizabeth actually says in season 1, where she says, if you have an object and you give it a different name, it's still the same thing. And we thought that the Rider Bar was like such a cool, small little image to do exactly that, like tell Mikkel's story in a way, that you have something that inside it's still the same, just the branding is different. And so that's quite good.
And what does it do for fans of the cinema and the culture of the 80s like you, when Stephen King, the father of It and Stand By Me, writes, you think the world is going to shit, then you find out other people are watching Dark, and you say, thank you, God, there's hope. How did you feel about that?
I honestly, for one day, I wasn't able to do anything. I was just paralyzed. It's still like, when you read it like that, I still get goosebumps, even though that's really cheesy. But it's, I mean, oh my God, it's like I don't even, I'm lacking words.
Yeah, it's really it's unbelievable that someone like him would actually watch something we did, and he's such a big influence since our childhood, especially It, to be honest. That book really messed us up, but less about the clown or whatever, but it was really this feeling that he created in It, that this nostalgia, this melancholic feeling towards your childhood and what you've missed, and this combination of the group of children and then the adults, and that they are actually, that's actually a big influence on Dark, because that was always what we were interested in, and we just added the time travel to get there, sort of, to this situation. But
also how he creates small town atmosphere, and that you always have the feeling that it's like this on the outside, this really nice, beautiful town, but there's always something surfacing that is dark, and the way he creates atmosphere, I think, is just phenomenal. So we're like really huge fans, and having a comment like that come back is just mind-blowing.
And talking about the music, there's also a very important element in Dark, is the Ben Frost original compositions. How did you set the tone for the music? How did you work with him?
It's literally, we were facing actually a wall during post-production of season 1, because we get the story right in the editing, but something was not working, and that was really the sound stuff and the music, and we felt like we really were struggling. We didn't get the music right, unfortunately, And just by chance, one of our editor used some stuff from Ben Frost's on a couple scenes from Fortitude, that other show he did. And all of a sudden we felt like, well, this sounds really interesting, that there's a voice that sounds like our voice, at least in our head. And we reached out to him and we felt like, well, because he lives in Iceland and he's from Australia and he's busy, we felt like, well, he will have no time. And by chance, he actually was free and he flew over and watched one episode and literally he said, just give me that episode, give me a week and I'll send you some stuff. So we really literally gave him no notes, to be honest. And he came back with this main theme that we used until the very last episode. And from that day on, this collaboration with him was a beautiful one because it's literally, I don't know, we're like...
you guys have a bromance.
Yeah, we have a bromance. He has a beard, I have a beard. We just love each other. And on a very, we don't give us notes really. And I accept completely his work and he accepts ours. And it just matches like a perfect dance partner where it just works. You can't explain why. And I think he's really a fantastic composer.
And you said in an interview that there's only one rule that you follow on set is to stay true to one feeling. Do you just relate to that? Can you explain that rule?
Yeah, I keep saying that, and I might be wrong, but I don't think so, because I truly believe that every film, every story follows one feeling, like a song where there's a tone that you are trying to hit, and then there are variations to that tone, but you stick to that tone. And I think the movies I love the most, and I kept watching them, I just realized that they're really also doing the same thing, that they're literally following one feeling. I think Twin Peaks follows one feeling that creates that world, and Heat, Michael Mann's film, follows one feeling, the fear of being alone. And whoever was in LA knows that feeling, that's really a big part in LA, that you always constantly feel alone, sitting in your car in this huge city, being alone and have no real friends. I really connect to that. And if you watch all those scenes in Heat, I truly believe that each scene is following that feeling. So that's the same how we treated Dark, where we felt like this has to feel like one thing and not 1,000 things, and have all these different variations, but actually have this one core feeling. Yeah.
And I think maybe there's, for me, one scene that, one song and one scene that really embodies that idea of one feeling. And I'd like to show it to you right now. It's extract number 2.
My body is a cage. Take what we are given. Just because you've forgotten doesn't mean you're forgiven. You're standing next to me.
Es beginnt.
My mind holds the key.
Wo gehen wir hin?
Set my body free. My body is a cage.
For me, this song, this extract really shows everything you just said before. There's many storylines, there are many characters, different timelines, but there's one thing, that embodies everything and that takes everything with it, and it's a feeling.
Yes.
But that's exactly why the lyrics fit so well. My body is a cage. What I said before, there's how can you get out of yourself? How can you break free from your ego? How can you let go of what you want? And I think that's it all comes together in that montage.
Yeah, and
it's overwhelming feeling that the question if our destiny is determined or do we have a free will, which is also that feeling of being in a cage. And that's why we literally had this Adam and God image of two fingers trying, like this overwhelming feeling that we have no power over the world and will never have. I think that's also something that we really wanted to try out in this sequence, you know.
And going for the first time into a series after feature films, it feels like you really quickly mastered the art of mixing all characters like in a dance, sometimes at the end of the episodes, just to never forget other characters. Why is it so efficient, this kind of editing at the end of an episode?
I mean, in all honesty, we just did what we thought was going to work. I'm not sure that we can pinpoint the theoretical approach behind it and say if you do X, Y, Z, then it's always going to work. I think it was, of course, it's a very, very heady, plotted structure, but in the end, we kind of always just trusted our instincts, which are luckily enough quite aligned. So we both kind of knew what we wanted to deliver. And it just always felt handling so many people that, and it goes back to the idea of hitting one feeling, that even if you have a lot of people, as long as they are all kind of trapped in the same way or struggle with the same issues, it works quite well to intercut them all the time. Like you have to pay a little bit of attention, but to me, it doesn't feel like you're always losing the thread. Like if you really submit to it, then it kind of flows and you can go from one character to the next character because it's all bound together by this feeling or by this core idea, which I think why it works. And obviously from season to season, we did get a better idea coming out of the editing room what really works structural wise. So I wouldn't say we mastered it, but we got a little bit better every time. But I think it's just such a unique thing. I don't know if there is like, an underlying structure that you could, for example, teach or something like that. It's just a thing on its own.
But there were certain elements we knew we wanted to establish, like there's always this montage at each end of the episode where you combine all characters with a piece of music. So as complex and as many characters the show has, we wanted to give the audience something to hold onto where okay, when this is coming, then the episode is almost finished, so I can rest my brain for a moment and try to digest what I just saw. So we knew that we need elements like this also to help the audience to, again, as I said, rest or just give a feeling of structure where they can hold on to,
Also create space for people to think, which is quite important.
Yeah, I think it's a very defining thing about the show, that it's also, you make space for reflection, for thoughts. Is that something that comes in the writing? From the writing, is it something you do in the editing?
It's already in the writing, but it's something we constantly, in every step, remind everyone of. So in the writing, in the script, you constantly read, she looks at him for a beat, a long beat. Like there are constantly already pauses in there, but also when you're directing on set, like you really watch out for enough space between the dialogue, which usually you're trying to really get a fast pace, but in dark you kind of go against it, because also in editing you want to have possibilities for a person to really think. Like I, as an audience, want to see that person is now thinking about what just happened, and I need to see it, because otherwise I don't believe any of the action that's happening, and it gives me time and space to think about what he might be thinking in that moment as well. So yeah, there's a lot of thinking in the script and thinking moments in the editing room as well.
So it's a perfect link for my next topic, which is time. Could you tell us what is your favorite traveler story, time traveling story?
You can start.
I mean, we had that question a lot. I'm thinking of giving a different answer, but
You always say Harry Potter.
Yeah, I'm going with Harry Potter again.
Yes.
Because I love the Harry Potter franchise, and I really think that that the third movie, The Prisoner of Azkaban, is the best one of the whole installment, and I really like how they treat the idea of time travel, and that it's actually a loop, and that they later find out how they push things forward in their own narrative. So I have to say Harry Potter.
Then I have to say Back to the Future, but just because it's really the opposite philosophy to our show, where it's about free will. If you go back in time, you can change the future, because in ours you can't, because everything is simultaneously. But the script is just so perfect. If you keep rewatching that movie, especially the first and the second one, I would say, it's literally such a perfect written script, like really perfect. Tonally, I'm more on the Terminator time travel movies, which I like more because it's more dark, and the second one is also really interesting about time travel and how you can influence and what influences the future. That's more part of our show, that you try to travel back to stop an event, and then you're actually causing the event because you travel back. That's stuff I like more, to be honest. But I think the perfect time travel thing is Back to the Future.
Yeah, and you pay homages to some of those references in the show. The very first book ever written about time machine is the H.G. Wells story. It was written at the end of the 19th century, when cinema was invented. So the time travel stories and cinema are, just started together. So it seems to me very normal that at the age of streaming, when something completely new is happening, some creators like you just reinvent the time traveling stories. Did you find like new rules, like new thing you wanted to do that had never been seen before in that genre?
I think I think we tried a lot of things that I don't know if hadn't been done, but where people would have said, do you really think this is a good idea? Like having that many characters, having that many, like not only jump into one time period, but we're like jumping around like crazy. Then also introducing parallel worlds. So it kind of like, if you haven't seen it and you just hear about it, it feels like really overloaded. But that was what we were really interested in how can we visually describe the idea of time travel and what it actually means and all its consequences for us humans. Like, what does it actually really mean? How can we find a visual concept that tells that? And I think that's what we were really interested in. And then also do it in an entertaining way. So it was quite a task to tackle, and we just did it the way we did it.
Yeah, and sometimes time traveling stories can be cheesy because of makeup, because they have one actor go through different ages and then he becomes a grandfather or whatever. In Dark, we must talk about the brilliance of casting. How did you find those actors? Did you have money to make them do plastic surgery?
Yeah, that would have helped with the schedule, to be honest. No, it's really the work of Simone Beer, who is the casting director on all 3 seasons, and her really hard work and digging into all the German actors. Literally at the end of season 3, I came back to her because we were looking for, I think, a doctor or so, I don't know. And I said, like, and she presented me a couple of male actors, and I wasn't convinced yet, and I said, like, come on, there must be more, like, show me. And she literally said, I showed you everyone in Germany. There are no more people. And I went to her office because I didn't believe her, and I'm a bit stubborn. And I went through her archive, and literally we casted everyone that is living, or I went back to people like she said, he's already dead 10 years ago, so we can't do that. But she did a really fantastic job. It was really challenging. It took months to get this cast ready for shooting. I think at least 4 months before season 1. And then we added all these characters. So it was not like an easy job for her until the end. She had constantly find the right people. And yes, I agree. I think she did a really, really fantastic job with like the matches that you literally buy them as the younger versions and older versions.
And Jantje, when you write, how do you prepare the script for the actors to be clear? Do you have like codes? Did you have like ways to indicate different time periods? Or how did you make it clear for the actors?
Yeah, so our slug lines look really odd because it always reads what world, A or B world, then what time is it? Is it 1888, or is it like that? It's always in the slug line, and then there are like so many things in there. And then also in the third season for Marta, it was always Marta B1, Marta B2, Marta A. So just that they know what actually, in what kind of state they are in. But they always could give me a call. So whenever they felt, and the dialogue is sometimes very, very ambiguous, like you don't really know what it's hinting at, so they can call me. And also I would always write little notes for everyone on set when I felt that a scene was like not explaining itself, then I would also pass on some notes. But I mean, Bo basically was the one who had to tell them what it means.
I just saw them go left, go right, stop, say that line.
So one of you writes and the other directs, or is it more complicated than that?
No, it's that easy. She hates set, so she's never on set. I hate the writer's room and everything that you have to do beforehand. And while I'm shooting, she's in the editing room, and then I join the editing room after the shoot. So we really, it's a benefit to do something like this with two people, to be honest, and very helpful also, because I think not one single person can do this alone, especially if it's so complex. But I also think no one can actually really do it. We really admire showrunners that are completely alone and are doing a show completely alone. We just don't get it, how they can do that.
Yeah, but you're also one of the very few directors who could direct every episode, which seems incredible, because sometimes there are syndicates of directors and people can't always do that. I mean, some directors like Jane Campion, Soderbergh, David Lynch, or Rainer Fassbinder did it. But how did you impose that of being the only director?
It was forced.
No, to be honest, at the beginning it was a budget discussion. Yeah. Can we pay 3 crews and 3 directors during the first season? And on season 1 it was actually difficult, so we decided, okay, I do it myself without actually knowing what that means, because it is at the end a lot of shooting days and it is exhausting, but then I really enjoyed doing it. And we felt on the second season we should keep that system, because we were constantly fearing that if you bring more voices in, then this whole House of Cards would fall apart easily. And I really don't like shows where you can tell the first 2 episodes were directed by this really great director, and then episode 3, 4 a bit, it's okay, and then they're getting better again. But there are also, again, other shows with a lot of directors and it all feels like one thing. And again, we don't understand how they do that. But I think Dark was just way too complex to be handled by more people than the 2 of us, to be honest. And that's why we decided I direct everything, you basically write everything. But it didn't help that at the end we were very, very exhausted. We would lie if it was an easy ride. It's not.
And did you bring your own like visual team? Like freely, did Netflix suggested technicians, or how did you bring your own team from feature films?
Yeah, we had basically only our crew we were working with for the last couple of years. And Netflix is very filmmaker supporting. I mean, everyone read about that, and it's actually true. They never tell you, but we want you to work with this guy or do it with them, or they are really, really filmmaker friendly. So yeah, we were all, and I think that was also a benefit, because none of us worked on TV or series before. ever. No one, not the DP, not the production designer, not the costume designer. We were all doing feature films, and this is how we treated the whole dark universe. We said, like, let's make 3 really long movies that are mostly around 10 hours long, and let's treat it as if it's really a feature film, and that it looks like a feature film, and it looks big and has big themes, and it's less typical, especially like typical German TV shows, how they look like.
Yeah. And how did you meet Netflix? When did the project started with the platform?
So we just finished Who Am I, which was the last feature film we did in Germany, and it screened in Toronto, and Netflix was there and saw it, and they really liked it. And so they approached us basically because they wanted to turn Who Am I into a series. And we didn't really like that idea. First of all, because we were kind of done with the whole hacker theme. We thought it wasn't interesting for us anymore. Also, there was Mr. Robot out, so it didn't feel very original. And then it was kind of like a difficult situation because Bo was shooting in the US a movie, and we didn't really feel like we wanted to do TV. We were like, nah, let's not. So, but they were they really wanted to get in a room with us. And once they did, we pitched them a couple of ideas, and they really liked dark. Like, it immediately clicked, and they could see the scope behind it and where it could go. And then we were falling in love with the idea of making a TV show more and more as well.
Yes, and did you enjoy the collaboration with Netflix? I mean, did you find the freedom that you were expecting?
Yeah, it was really great. I mean, in the beginning, the Netflix team was really small, especially for the European side. So we had really some very, very close relationships with the people we were working with, especially Kelly Lügenbiel, who really became a friend over the time. So it was really a working relationship that we never had like that before. I think it was truly special.
And can you tell us a word about your next project? Will you still work on a series for them, or will you go back to movies?
No, we're doing a new show for Netflix called 1899, and we're in not development. We're actually prepping already, and Jantje is writing, and we're already prepping because it's a big show, and it's our first really international show. It's in English, but because the basic premise is that a bunch of immigrants travel on a steamer from Europe to New York in 1899, and we have all different nations on it, and it's a metaphor for Europe. So you have British people, you have French people, Spanish, we have people from Denmark, Poland, Germany, and also from Hong Kong, Chinese people. So it's a metaphor for Europe on a ship. But of course we love mystery and stuff like that. Things will happen, and the whole show turns into something completely different.
Well, that sounds amazing. So my next topic is Vinden. Can you, like David Lynch's Twin Peaks, or William Faulkner in the country of William Faulkner in his novels, Vinden is an imaginary place. How does that impact the writing, the imagination? Why didn't you choose a real town?
Because I think it just restricts you. I think we wanted to tell a feeling, an atmosphere, and the more freedom we have in terms of how is our geography laid out, what kind of things do we like, and also we never really show the whole town. That was quite important to us as well, so that the audience can put their own Vinden together in their head. That was quite important to us, and it makes it more enigmatic. It's kind of like this thing that's real and not real at the same time, which just, I think it sparks the imagination way more than taking a town that really exists.
And does the word Vinden mean anything in German?
Yeah, so it's a Vinden itself not, but what we wanted is winding. So like that everything is twisted, winding roads. Your storyline is kind of intertwined, twined. So that's the idea behind it.
And like The Big Sleep, Howard Hawks, or David Lynch, Lost Highway, Dark starts as a very recognizable story of a missing child, and then you go into the rabbit hole and you move into something completely unexpected. Was there a big influence of Lewis Carroll and Alice in Wonderland?
Interesting. Not really, to be honest, because I really think it's one of the oddest and strangest stories ever. It really it scares me, Alice in Wonderland, because it's really dark, to be honest. But definitely something like, we love storytelling that plays with the expectations of the audience always. We get easily bored, and we do understand the patterns easily because we're filmmakers, but we also think that the audience understand the patterns easily of storytelling, and especially in films. So we really admire stories and films that play with genres, or are mixing with genres, or are doing a magic trick where they're saying you think it's a crime show, but no, it's actually a time travel show. And we love South Korean films, like from Bong Joon-ho, who is like, I think, the master in mixing of genres. So those are more the influences, I would say, why we chose to tell Dark first as a typical crime story, and then turn it into something. And then especially season 2 and 3, like if you compare episode 1 with the rest, like you're like, okay, that's really an interesting arc. And no one could have told anyone, I think, after watching episode 1, where we would end with the 3 seasons of Dark.
And also we're just really obsessed with really complicated riddles. And so, like, how do you enter something? What kind of information are you giving in the beginning? What do you need to watch out for? So because you might still need that information at a later point of time. And we always knew that we had to, like, kind of take the audience by the hand and just really slowly walk them into Winden, and just let them kind of enjoy the atmosphere first, even though it's raining, and then just, like, kind of, as you said, rabbit hole, push them into the rabbit hole. And it was really important for us to start on something different and then twist it again.
So our next extract is from season 3, and I think it really shows where we started, like this, look from the 80s and going back into something that we know to something completely new and strange.
Die Weiche im Knotenpunkt der Zeitschleife. Der Moment, der die Dinge in die eine oder in die andere Richtung laufen lässt. Du holst ihn in unsere Welt. Oder nicht? Eine Linie, die in einer Schleife wieder auf sich selber trifft. 2 mögliche Wege. Auf der Außenkante der Linie oder auf der Innenkante der Linie. Und doch ist es dieselbe Linie. 2 sich überlappende Realitäten.
In this season 3, you went very, very far into those, ventured very, very far into those themes. Maybe you wouldn't have been able to go there at the beginning because you need to establish a lot of stories and characters. And we realized that it's a show about science, quantum physics, but also there's a lot of symbols, like you said, riddles, alchemy. And how did you mix those 2 elements, science and something magical?
I truly believe that it's both the same thing. Because when you really dig deep into mythology, esoterics, is that the English word? Or science, that a lot of the theories are kind of the same. They just use a different language to explain it. So like really reading a lot of stuff and finding out where some of those things match. and then use those matches to put it into the narration was also really, really interesting for me. And as you said before, I think that's true. Like we could have never done that in the first season. It's almost like you need to learn a language to really understand what's happening in season 3. So we're building up vocabulary a little bit until when you get to season 3, you hopefully are equipped to get the concept behind it. And season 3 was really difficult to explain also to everyone in the team. Like we constantly were drawing weird signs and structures. So she dies here, but she doesn't die there, and it was a really difficult thing. And it's great to see how the language of cinema can make understanding so much easier, like because pictures really tell things on a different level as well. It's different than reading a book.
But we planted those symbols from the first episode on, the strangers in the hotel room with an 8. If you turn the 8, it's the infinity symbol. That's always symbols we played with from the beginning. Or we also had images we used where you see two gods blowing at 3 worlds, Adam and Eve. And we basically hinted already in season 2. Are you still there? No, you're frozen. Sorry. So we hinted already stuff in season 2 about season 3. And I truly believe that symbols are just codes that you try to read and understand, and that they stand for something, as the DNA is also a symbol, but also a code. And like that's, as you said, I think before, we really love riddles a lot because the world is for us a riddle and we try to solve it and we will fail at the end. But I don't know.
Yeah, and I think maybe Dark could be said like a part of a more contemporary movement of films about alchemy, the transformation of time. I'm thinking about the OA on Netflix. I'm thinking about the series of Damon Lindelof, who's also, plants a lot of symbols. David Lynch, of course, season 3 of Twin Peaks was released the same year as Dark season 1. So there's definitely crossing between those two. And today, Tenet, Christopher Nolan. Do you enjoy those films? Do you feel related to them?
No, absolutely. I really enjoyed VOA. I think it was really awesome, and I'm just really happy if a story is told on multi-levels. Like if it's just not text, and I'm just okay, this is what's going on, but that there are really a lot of layers beneath there where I basically get 5 stories in one. And the good ones that do that, they are always hitting on a more philosophical or more spiritual kind of journey as well. So I really enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, and I think stuff like that you always use in art, or good art does, that you put up something, if it's a painting or whatever, and you can't fully explain it, but you use codes or symbols or whatever, and others read those codes and symbols in a different way. And that's the beauty of art, that I like. The good example is really Twin Peaks. I think Lynch knew what he was doing, but sometimes he didn't. Yeah. But that's completely okay, because his subconsciousness told him we have to go into this way and have this weird room where he always meets Laura and it's backwards, and then we read it as a symbol for the in-between or whatever. But I think his gut just told him, I need this room. I have a feeling like, and I remember an interview I read that he had this, he saw this curtain in a dream, and he felt like, I need this curtain. I have to show this curtain. And so the room came to life, and not because he was like, I need a symbol for the between world where we see dead Laura Palmer. And that's how we work too. Like we love throwing balls into the air. And some of them we catch because we feel they're right, like the 8 on the room of the stranger in the hotel, knowing if you turn it, it's an infinity symbol, but we not yet know back then in episode 1, we will use that later on, and it will be basically a symbol for the entire show with the 2 worlds, connected.
I think that good art, what it always does, it is open, and the viewer can kind of see himself in the art, like how he interprets the art. And I think that's what we try to do as well.
So I think it really worked well, and the next extract is actually a short edit of 1 minute of your viewers reflecting on Dark.
Noah, en allant chercher dans le bunker Elisabeth, couche avec Elisabeth. Donc Noah a un enfant avec Elisabeth. Et l'enfant d'Elisabeth et de Noah est Charlotte. Alors oui, ça fait mal au crâne.
Je poursuis mon raisonnement concernant Thésée et Ariane, sachant que ce mythe a souvent été rapproché d'un proto-mythe indo-européen assez répandu, qui parle des relations un peu tumultueuses entre le soleil et la lune, tel un couple.
Dark has always done a terrific job of casting actors who resemble each other to portray characters showing up at different ages through the story. Season 3 is no exception, and this time they even cast some real-life father and sons. For the adult unknown in the older version, they cast Jacob and Hans Deal, who clearly have a family resemblance.
Yeah, it's got to be him. And they're his parents, Adam and Eve, so it's Adam and Eve's son. And we've got 3 versions of their son. Okay, I'm assuming that's what that is. It could be something completely different, but he's the only character that we just don't know anything about. I knew she'd be pregnant. I don't know why. Just, you have a feeling sometimes. And
in retrospect, it should have been obvious that infinity symbol represented a human being. You see this big family tree branching into that infinity symbol, and then you have this new mysterious character show up, the lip-scarred trio. Should have put 2 and 2 together.
So for me, it's something very representative of this new generation of shows and its reception by the audiences, is that now people reflect, they re-edit the images. Were you aware of all those videos? Did you watch some? Were you sometimes amazed at what people guessed or saw in your images?
Yeah, I'm completely obsessed by watching fan reactions. I think it's the most satisfying thing in the world. Even if there are some that don't like it, you feel so connected to the people that watch what you've done, and I think that's just amazing. And then that goes, like, that's not only in Germany. Like, you're connected to people from Brazil or from Australia, and they've seen what you've done and they think about it, and I think that's just it's amazing. Yeah, I'm obsessed.
And Damon Lindelof on the show Watchmen recruited one of his team writers, Jeff Jensen, who was a critic who wrote insane reviews of Lost. So maybe you will find a collaborator in one of these. Talking of internet and people who use it in a derivative way, the first film you wrote together in 2014 is called Who Am I? No System is Safe. And it was a huge international success. Can you tell us about that first collaboration as screenwriter and director?
It's not truly our first collaboration. It's we worked before together already on different movies, but it was the first one where I actually became a writer, I think. And before that, I was still a producer. It was a lot of fun, I remember, because the movie we did before had a more serious note to it. And this one was really more a fun take on hackers. And gosh, it seems so long ago.
It is really long ago.
Yeah.
Oh my God. But already the first start of us playing with the audience and having fun with that you think it's this, but then we open the box more and more and you realize you're watching actually something different. That was actually our first tryout, to be honest, into that section. And then it was fun for us because we are both not even close to hacker worlds or whatever. Like, we have no clue. We know how to turn on our computers and check emails and stuff like that. But just digging into that world was really interesting for us, because we read really interesting stuff and a lot of interviews and chat stuff also of these hackers and watched documentaries, and then just realized that they all have something in common, because we always try to find a theme in a story that could be the tone of it, what I was talking about before. And we thought on this one, what interested us the most was actually the question for your identity and who you are. And in the internet, you represent yourself as someone else. And how close are you actually to that person or that name you are? And especially as hackers, and why they actually choose. There was one famous hacker who was hacking systems all over the world, and he pretended he was a 14-year-old girl, which I loved, but he was actually just this older 42-year-old guy. And just this, I like that idea of them playing with identities, and that you could be everyone you want to, but if that makes you happy, that's a big question mark. And I think that was the theme that interested us the most on Humai, and less that it's also a heist movie and it's cool and there's action in it. But yeah.
And you like dark parallel universes. In Who Am I, you filmed the dark web, and you materialized the dark web. Maybe we could watch an extract, if you don't mind, from the movie.
Mit Pauls Box konnte ich das WLAN-Netz austricksen, indem ich ein zweites Netz mit der identischen Kennung parallel schaltete. Einen sogenannten Evil Twin. Wenn sich nun jemand von einem der anliegenden Büros in das Netz einloggen würde, könnte ich auf seinen Laptop zugreifen. Und von seinem Rechner auf den Server. MRX hatte uns einen Zugangscode für ein Darknet gegeben, in dem die Übergabe stattfinden sollte. Ich musste jetzt nur noch MRX den manipulierten Trojaner übergeben. Sobald er sich damit auf dem Europol-Server einloggen würde, würde seine Maske fallen.
Franz.
That is really long ago.
How do you feel looking back at those images?
I think now I have, it really always takes a while. I need distance to watch the stuff we've done, and now I have enough. I think it's fun. I think it's cool.
Yeah, it's weird. For me, it's weird, but it's part of our life, no?
Yeah, and you have this very hectic editing, this homage to Fight Club, the David Fincher film. There's even a poster of the movie in the room of the character. How did you feel towards German cinema when you started? Did you feel like you had something? What kind of films did you want to make?
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, not German films. We have a really not a good relationship towards the German cinema, to be honest. I really love Fritz Lang and stuff like that, but that's really, really long ago. So I think we were once really brilliant, definitely. And we invented the genre here before everything went down with the shitty Nazis, and everyone fled the country. But we had really, really the interesting directors here. And then it felt like nothing actually happened, or everyone tried to feel safe, and there was not the urge to try out things for many decades. And there's not one decade like the new Hollywood era in America, where it was an answer towards American society and the political situation back then, where you have all these interesting movies. So we have a very mixed feeling towards, as I said, German cinema. But they are getting better, I would say. But we really love more films from Europe or America, or, as I said, Japanese or South Korean cinema. We adore a lot. But we don't like, I don't know.
I think it's quite simple. Yeah. We just like visual films. We like, because we feel that movies, but also TV series, it's a visual medium. So you have to tell your story in pictures. And I think that in Germany, it's more about telling the story through text. And it's not really a translation to visual images. And I think that's why what we're not relating to, because we really want to do a visual journey. And yeah.
And also maybe your taste for symbols, which is a language of images, which makes a lot of sense in your films. The success of Who Am I led you, Baran, to Hollywood, where you made a film with Jamie Foxx, Sleepless. It's a remake of the French film Nuit Blanche. How did that happen?
Well, that was like they called me, and it was greenlit after 2 weeks, and Jamie Foxx liked me and liked Who Am I, and it was a project that really happened really quickly, and that was for us during that time, I would say, something really new as an experience, that all of a sudden really a movie happens like this. And that's why we went for that journey, and it was fun and it was interesting, but it was also challenging because of certain reasons. And yeah, but it taught me that I actually also want to live in Europe and not in America too, because I had to spend a lot of time in America, and I love America, but it is really different for a European to live there. It's just different. It's another world almost.
I wanted to ask you: did you feel like a child or like a dream? You know, being as a cinephile, going to Hollywood and making an action film with a GTO car and Jamie Foxx.
Yes, that brings it on a point. To be honest, no, it is like, I mean, I started at film school when I was really young, and I never dreamed of being on a set with Jamie Foxx and crashing a car in a casino. So it's a huge playground you can play with, and they are very, very professional. It's huge. Everything is way too big, to be honest. The crews are big, budgets are big, and it's just sometimes also overwhelming a little bit, because it is so big, but you can tell it's a huge industry. That's the big difference. But I think that the most interesting experience I had was towards extras, because I don't know how it's in France, but in Germany, extras are a bit difficult. They are not paid well. It's a terrible pay role, but they are also, sometimes they just disappear after half of the day because they are just bored of waiting and whatever. And they have no discipline, in my eye at least. But I totally get it, because you don't earn any money for what you're doing there. And then you're not even in the picture. But in the States, they were so professional, because they had this American dream of everyone can be everything. So maybe someone will see how I act in the background and will put me in the foreground, and then one day I will be a big actor. So that was really, I was really blown away how well and great the extras were working in the States.
And it's a quote from Quentin Tarantino when he made Kill Bill. He said, you really become a director when you do a fight scene. There is an incredible fight scene. Did you approach this scene, this choreography? Was it something completely new for you, or was it like regular filmmaking?
No, it was completely new for me, because I've never done fight scenes before, or especially not those kind of fight scenes. But I have Jeff Imada, the stunt coordinator, who we were working very closely, and he did Born Identity. He did The Crown, The Crow. He did The Crown. That's good. And he's this fantastic Asian American who did all these crazy stuff, and it was literally, it's almost like choreographing dancing. Like it's two partners that have to work really closely, and it's all about the right move at the right time, and that was really interesting for me. And so it felt like almost like dialogue. So you are coordinating and timing certain things, but except words, it's motion and movements. And that was, of course, again, that was a lot of fun, and also flipping a car in the tunnel in the middle of the night in Atlanta, which was really huge for me. I remember I was sitting there and I was giggling behind the monitors, because again, I felt like this young film student who was allowed to crash stuff for free. Yeah.
And just it makes me think that when you film Atlanta or when you film Vinden, you really integrate those images of the sky, the cars, the exteriors. Very important to root them in the story.
Yeah, I just like this point of view from a very high angle, and like a metaphor for God looking at us and just always whatever, showing that we are so small and we're part of a bigger world. It's like, I don't know, I just like the power of it a lot. And I think we used it basically in all of our projects so far. Yeah.
And there is one of the best taglines, poster taglines ever for Sleepless. It's "Don't judge a cup by its cover."
Yes.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
So we're almost at the end of the masterclass, so it's time for the beginning. Jantje, you started as a producer. That's what I read in Munich. Baran, you were born in Switzerland. How did you meet? How did you start movies together?
We met at film school. Bo was 2 years above me and in the directing class, and I was in the producing class. And he had been in Barcelona for almost a year to do like a sabbatical, I think. He painted and did stuff. So I didn't see him in the first 2 years I was at film school. And then this gorgeous man walked in and it was a love story. So before we actually became collaborators, we became
the couple.
Lovers. Yeah. That's how it all started.
And you were like basically on our first movie we did together, and you were a line producer, and I was directing, and she was pregnant with our child, and you were standing in the field in the morning, I guess, and she just realized, is this really the future I wanna go, especially with a kid, and how do we deal with this whole thing? But you were always interested in writing anyways, so she decided, let's try writing, and I think that tryout was really good.
That was a good idea.
And yeah.
But now I'm back to producing again. Now we're producing as well, and the whole family film thing is still something we need to figure out.
And how did you started your first feature film? The Silence in English, Das letzte Schweigen. I hope I'm pronouncing correctly. How did this movie started?
It was based on a novel that we both read, which we really liked and tried to option. It was from Jan Costin Wagner, and it was what we really liked about it, that it again had this theme of a small town and things being really rotten in the underbelly of it. And it was a multi-perspective story, which is something we're always naturally drawn to, like that you just not only have one character, but really multiple characters that struggle with the same problem, and you see different perspectives on an issue. And also it was about pedophilia, which is not an easy subject to tackle, but we found it was really interesting. Like it really excited us. And the idea was to do exactly that, like slowly peel away the layers of a small town and see what's lying underneath. And yeah,
I think at the end we are just interested in human behavior, and especially if it goes on the dark side of the moon. And a while ago we were also obsessed with serial killers, just trying to understand why they're acting how they act. But in general, I don't know, maybe this has, and that's why we were so interested in two pedophiles in a film, which is, as Jantje said, it's a heavy subject. And again, I would not recommend new filmmakers to start with a subject like that. But we just are interested in human behaviors constantly, I would say. And this might root into our German heritage. That we are from Germany, because Germany has a big guilt with the Second World War and the First World War, of course, but especially with the Second World War. And we were constantly taught at school that we should feel guilty, and we did terrible things, but generations before us, and we should constantly question ourselves as a nation, and just trying to understand that. We said a couple of years ago in an interview that for us, for example, Adolf Hitler is not a monster. Americans, I would say, would just say he's a monster. He did bad and evil things, and he did, of course. But we, as the Germans, had to realize he was actually a human being. He was one of the Germans, and he did all these terrible things, which makes it even more scary. And we are interested in, like, why are people actually turning into these villains or antagonists and doing bad things, because I don't believe that anyone is born evil, and that circumstances happen and turn you into something like that.
We're really always interested in finding the tipping point. Like, when does someone really tip into the darkest place possible?
And what was the reception of The Silence? Was it a movie that was released or just only for mostly festivals? How was the reception?
Yeah, it was a bomb at the German box office, so it didn't work, because who would have known that a story about two pedophiles is a box office hit? But it was screened at the Piazza Grande at Locarno. It did a great festival tour. It was released in France as well, and it was well received. I think the French people maybe like dark stories more than the Germans, and in Spain it was successful.
Also in UK, like the UK audience was bigger than the German audience. It really didn't do that well in Germany.
Okay, so that would be our last extract.
So that's really long ago, but I still love it.
Yeah, I think it's.
It is really creepy.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to say. It's an incredible pleasure to discover this film. It's a masterpiece. The cinematography is beautiful. The atmosphere is creepy as hell. The characters are incredible. The ending is terrifying. And it seems everything was there from the start. The shots you were talking about through the woods, the year 1986. And the innocence, the thief of innocence. No, it's not child, but there are children and pedophiles. So it seems like a very important film in your filmography.
Yeah, I really love it.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it in a while, and just seeing those shots, what I like the most about it, that there are no words, and you still get the full story. You completely understand just through the visuals what they are thinking, what they are about to do, and how scary that shot, the car gets out of the frame and you think, oh, thank God, and then it turns back. This is, for me, I know. I also love There Will Be Blood, the opening first 10 to 50 minutes where there are no words and just images and telling the story, and you still get the character. I think that's the power of cinema, that you at the end actually don't need words at all.
So I have one very last question that I wanted to ask earlier, so it will be weird now, but what was the last scene you shot in dark, and why?
The last scene we shot actually was planned from the beginning of preparation of season 3. I told our first AD, it has to be the shot when Jonas and Marta disappear at the crossing. We wanted that definitely for the last day, so we can say goodbye, they can say goodbye. It was very emotional, like perfectly directed. Everyone was crying. And I think really the last shot was also the very wide shot where they actually disappear. Where they didn't, of course, it's visual effects, but that wide shot, and then they had to come back to us, and we were waiting for them. And that walk was really long because it was really far away. And I know that Luis and Lisa, they fell apart. They were just crying the entire walk back because they had to say goodbye to their characters too, which was, I think, a very interesting and great journey for them also as it was for us, but I think especially for them, of course, you know, because they were at the end Jonas and Martha, sort of, you know.
Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and
thank you.
So nice to see you watching your own movies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.